Today is March 12th, 2024. This is episode 61 of the Sports Daily College Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Vowells, and as usual, I'm joined by Mike Koomar. Tonight, Mike and I will go over the Southeastern Conference, the all-conference teams from the SEC and SEC tournament preview. We'll go over the location. We'll go over bracketology. We'll do it all. We'll keep it, pretty similar to how we did our two previews yesterday. So, Mike, we had some opinions on the sites of the other tournaments. The SEC will be played at the Bridgestone Arena, home of the Nashville Predators. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, the SEC does go to Nashville a lot for the basketball tournament. It is a little bit north for most of those schools in the conference. Clearly, this is going to be more of a home crowd for Tennessee and Kentucky. With that being said, Nashville has become one of the biggest cities in the South and one of the biggest cities in SEC country. I think Atlanta would be the only bigger one now. And you look at the accessibility, one of the bigger airports also in the Southeast, has a lot of flights that are going to be direct coming around. And of course, Nashville, like I said, a growing city. It's going to have a lot of alumni from a lot of different schools, especially to include Texas A&M, Florida, really any of these schools. It's going to be pretty easy to travel to. So all in all, I do like this venue a lot.
Yeah, they've, over the years, like you said, it's been in Nashville most of the time. They've gone to Tampa here and there. They've gone to Atlanta here and there. But I think all three of those are pretty good locations for this tournament. Pretty easy for fans to get there. And I don't think that's really going to change with the new teams coming in. Like Texas, not too far from Nashville. Oklahoma, not too far. And that's the only two coming in, if I'm not mistaken. They didn't get any more, did they? I don't think so.
No, it's just those two.
Yeah, so it is going to be...
Those are easy flights.
It is going to be in Nashville, Mike, until 20...
And they've just played incredible basketball for just his second year in this program. Has really turned it around. Remember South Carolina a while back went to the Final Four. But other than that, this basketball program had much of any success in the 21st century. So congrats to Coach Paris on getting them back to the tournament this year.
He's obviously done a tremendous job. Mike, we picked them higher than most people, and I think we had them 12th, and the coaches and media had them 13th. The only negative to that is that Lamont Paris is probably going to be picked off by a bigger program here coming up. And there's a couple that we'll get to in the offseason, but his name has already been linked with some pretty big jobs across the country, and then there's going to be a couple more big ones that pop up too. So, done to the Gamecocks. They're going to be in, like you said. They're going to be favored in the first game, and we'll see how far they can do, especially with the roster that definitely is not as good as some of the other teams in this conference. But they've been able to go. They had a chance for the title. They had a chance for the share of the title on the final day, which is better than anyone could have thought. We'll move on to Player of the Year, Mike. Now, two of these conference Player of the Years are about as easy as it gets. This one's Dalton Knecht from Tennessee, Transfer of the Year from Northern Colorado. We've compared him to Kevin Durant multiple times on here. He's going to be a first-team All-American. Not really a contest here, is there?
Yeah, I mean, you really wonder how did this guy not get recruited by anybody out of high school? He was playing at Northern Colorado. I actually got to see him play last year. He was a good player, but now he's the runaway SEC Player of the Year. I mean, there really isn't anybody else that you could throw in there a Player of the Year that isn't Dalton Knecht this year.
So a couple more of the awards, Mike, before we get into the teams. We've got Sean East from Missouri being the Scholar Athlete of the Year, Reed Sheppard being the Freshman of the Year from Kentucky, Rob Dillingham being the Sixth Man of the Year, and then Zakai Ziegler from Tennessee, the Defensive Player of the Year. So we'll go to the Kentucky guys first. I'm happy that both of them got an award because they're two of the most electric players to watch in the country. They're both going to be very high in the upcoming NBA draft, but Sheppard gets Freshman of the Year, Dillingham gets Sixth Man of the Year. Reed Sheppard doesn't start either. They could have both gotten both awards.
Yeah, and I think both guys are probably going to be going pro next year despite not being starters. And it kind of shows Kentucky getting back into that old frame of mind that we're going to get back to the one and dones. and I think it's been kind of successful for them this year. They're not a top 10 program right now, but what we've talked about on the show, they could go on a long run, and it would be because of guys like Reed Shepard and Rob Dillingham that have played so productively this year, despite coming off the bench.
And they've got two other freshmen who are pretty good themselves too, who were higher recruits than these two. DJ Wagner, Justin Edwards, they're pretty good players too. Unfortunately, they're not going to get any love in the day and age of Dillingham and Reed Shepard. So Sakai Ziegler, Defensive Player of the Year. Without like a true elite shot blocker in this conference, I think this is a pretty good one. Ziegler's really quick with his hands and gets a bunch of steals.
Yeah.
We'll go to the first team, Mike. We've got 8 players on this first team. Unfortunate for the 5-team first team truthers like we are. And Player of the Year, Dalton Knecht is there. His teammate, Defensive Player of the Year, Sakai Ziegler is there. We have got Mark Sears from Alabama, Janai Broome from Auburn, Zion Poland from Florida, Antonio Reeves from Kentucky, Tolu Smith from Mississippi State, and Wade Taylor IV from Texas A&M. Mike, this is pretty much the best player on all of the teams in the top half except for South Carolina.
Yeah, pretty much. South Carolina didn't get much respect here in the first and second team players. They got 2 players in the second team of the SEC with the 9 people that are in the second team all SEC. I don't really understand why they don't do 5-team, or 5-player teams. But Tolu Smith with Mississippi State, he certainly deserves to be on there as a first-team player. He has been electric for this year, and he's going to be the reason that Mississippi State is going to be going to the NCAA tournament. So really happy to see Tolu Smith recognized for a first-team All-SEC.
Yeah, I mean, all these players are really good. All of them could have made the 5-person team. Now, I don't think I think it's alphabetical the way that I'm showing it to the YouTube here, Mike, by team. Been any one of those because they're all really good players. Now we'll go over to the second team. We've got Jalen Williams from Auburn, Walter Clayton from Florida, Rob from Kentucky, Matthew Morrell from Ole Miss, Josh Hubbard from Mississippi State, Talon Cooper from South Carolina, Michi Johnson from South Carolina, and Jonas Adu from Tennessee. Again, with more players on the team, we talked about this being the case with the third team in the Big 12 yesterday, Mike, that these are either the best players on some of the lower teams or some of the second or third options on the top teams.
Yeah, I mean, really good players here. Happy to see Ole Miss having a little bit of representation here. Not a whole lot of players below the middle part of the conference on this list, but this is still a good second team. The SEC doesn't have a third team, so they make it up. They have more than 3 teams in their 2-team All SECs, but nevertheless, still a lot of really talented, really good players. I'm really excited to watch in the SEC tournament. I think, Sean, this is going to be one of the most exciting tournaments this year.
And we've got defensive team here, Mike. We've got Janai Broome, Cameron Matthews, Jonas Adu, Sakai Ziegler, Anderson Garcia. I mean, none of these really... These are good defenders to me, but none of them really stand out, which is probably why Ziegler ended up getting the Defensive Player of the Year award.
Yeah. I mean, the SEC is not known for defense this year, that's for sure. So I think Sakai Ziegler was a clear winner, but definitely there wasn't going to be anybody from Alabama or Kentucky on this all-defensive team. That is for sure.
Yep, those teams we've talked about plenty of times. Viewers know it by now. Highly ranked offenses and teetering around the 100s in defense. And, we'll see how that works. Chances are one of them is going to win a couple games in the tournament. We've got the all-freshman team, Mike, and we've got 8 players here. The 3 of the 4 Kentucky freshmen, Hubbard from Mississippi State, who's been an elite guard, especially lately. We've got Colin Murray Boyles, kind of the old school 4 from South Carolina. We've got Aiden Holloway from Auburn, one of the many guards there. Alex Condon from Florida, again, one of the many kind of solid players for the Gators. And then Silas Tamari Jr. from Georgia. But this plenty of good freshmen in the SEC, and this team shows it because a couple of the other conferences, all freshman teams, they probably struggled to find five, and they've got eight surefire ones here.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple of these guys, you hope they can come back for a second year. I think Silas DeMary for Georgia is one that has a hell of a recruit, and really hope that he can continue and grow and develop as Georgia increasingly becomes a better team in the SEC.
We'll see how in the to go pro to go somewhere else. It could just be a transfer.
No,
And that is it for our awards, Mike. Obviously, not a ton of surprises. Now, did that say Coach of the Year? It did not. This is just straight off the SEC. Oh no, it was Lamont Paris. My bad, I forgot. It said Lamont Paris.
Lamont Paris. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So he obviously was deserving there. Plenty of good teams, plenty of teams that can do some damage in the tournament. So now, Mike, we're going to throw the tournament bracket up on the screen for the YouTube listeners. It starts tomorrow. We're recording this Tuesday night. It starts on Wednesday with Arkansas and Vanderbilt. And Georgia and Missouri. Mike, a couple, especially Arkansas, did not expect to be in this place.
Yeah, I mean, who would have thought Arkansas, one of the most disappointing teams this year, they're going to have to play day one in the tournament. And who knows what happens when you get to postseason with the Moss Bus. You never know when Arkansas can turn it up a notch, and they do play really well in the postseason. So maybe in a winner-go-home scenario, they start to kick it up a notch, but quite surprising and disappointing to see Arkansas in the 12 seed right now out of 14 teams in the SEC.
Yeah, it is pretty disappointing, Mike, that the first the preseason poll, Arkansas was first, Texas A&M was second, and those teams are in 7th and 12th.
Yeah.
So tough. The league is still good and probably better than people thought, but not very often that it happens when the first two teams in the poll do poorly and the conference is still pretty good. We've got quarterfinal.
Yeah.
We've got second round Thursday at the SEC. We've got the 8-9 matchup. Mississippi State wants to win that to avoid any sort of scenario where they get bounced from the tournament. Some people have them in the last four in right now. I think they're probably out of that, but there's no reason for them to.
You gotta think they are.
No reason to make things interesting with a loss to LSU.
Not at all, and I think they'll have a good job taking care of business against LSU. LSU, I'm still amazed that they have been able to be this competitive 2 years after they lost literally every single person in their program. So kudos to LSU for being even competitive and getting an 8 seed, but I think Mississippi State is going to get the job done.
Yeah, we've got South Carolina playing the winner of Arkansas and Vanderbilt. That could be an interesting one, assuming Arkansas gets through there. The Hogs have been playing better recently. They just have been very close to beating some good teams. We'll see if they can get some confidence going against the Commodores before they lock horns with the Gamecocks. We've got Ole Miss and Texas A&M in the 7-10 game. Both teams definitely on the outside looking in now, and certainly whoever loses this will be headed to the NIT.
Yeah, certainly. I think A&M is a team to steer the tournament. Obviously, they've had quite a disappointing season so far, but they won their last 3 games in the regular season, including a 26-point beatdown against Ole Miss on the road. So A&M is certainly trending in the right direction right now. They've got their win also last week was home against Mississippi State. So that's also a very good win. I think it's absolutely a possibility that they can knock off Ole Miss and then knock off Kentucky and really start to put themselves in that bubble conversation.
Yeah, they already have a win against Kentucky, and quad 1 win away at Ole Miss, quad 1 win against Mississippi State. Definitely Kentucky's another one. So maybe they can back their way in here with a couple of good performances. They certainly have the players to do it. Wade Taylor, first team all-conference selection, and they already did it once before. So I like Texas A&M to make a little run. We've got Florida, the 6th seed. Great year for the Gators. I think Todd Golden, Mike, is probably in the top 3 in Coach of the Year voting. It's usually the coach that overachieves the most, and it just turns out that Lamont Paris was ranked lower in the preseason. But got to give a lot of credit to Todd Golden for year 2 down there in Gainesville.
Yeah, absolutely. And Florida, they struggled a little bit early in the out of conference, but they kind of just seemed to quietly creep out of nowhere into contention for the SEC to get a top seed. They narrowly got almost got a double bye, but kudos to Florida for having a hell of a turnaround. They have not been a competitive school in basketball in about 7 years, so it's nice to see Florida back on the list. And I think they're going to have to watch out against Georgia in their quarterfinal or their second round game, rather. I think Georgia could certainly trip them up. But with that being said, Florida's a really good team. So I really like them, and I'm excited to see them play in March.
And the top 4 protected seeds, we've got Tennessee going to be playing a pretend neutral in front of a pretend neutral crowd. We've talked about that a lot over the years. When it's in their state, they'll have a majority of their fans there. We've got Alabama as the 4 seed, Kentucky is the 2 seed, and Auburn is the 3 seed. I think Florida Auburn will be an interesting one if it happens. I think Texas A&M Kentucky will be another interesting game if it happens. And then potentially either Arkansas or South Carolina versus Alabama could be interesting. Definitely, Mike, the bottom 3 quarterfinals on the bracket should be at least worth checking out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think this will be a really good one. I'll be honest, I'm not really very high on the 2 through 4 seeds. I think they are very vulnerable in this bracket, especially with the lack of defense that Alabama and Kentucky play. Auburn has certainly looked very vulnerable too. So I could totally see a scenario where you get to the semifinals and you got Tennessee, South Carolina, Texas A&M, and Florida there. It's certainly something to be had.
So, Mike, we're going to go over to bracketology first before we give our predictions. This was my projection before yesterday's games. Now, there wasn't a whole lot of these teams that even played. There are a couple of auto bids clinched. And, there's some other action in right now. This is obviously before yesterday's games, but I think we can show it again because really none of the power conference teams are playing. We've got the West Coast Conference Championship game starting in just about a minute. That could impact things. But we've got Tennessee as my first 2 seed. We talked about North Carolina possibly yesterday, Mike, not getting the 1 seed, and because they would be headed to the West if they do get the 1 seed. Tennessee is in that same boat. Now, Los Angeles is far away from Knoxville. We'll go the same conversation again. I don't think not getting that last 1 seed is the end of the world for the Volunteers.
I don't think it is. I do think that they're going to end up getting it because I think they're going to win. But I'll save that for later. I don't think it is, though. I don't think it is. And I don't really know if any of these top seeds really, really want to play out in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I think it's
other than Arizona.
I
think they want to be out there, but other than that, shoot.
Yeah, I think, Mike, if Tennessee does win the SEC tournament and picks up the, at least 2 really solid wins en route to that victory, they'll be the 1 seed. I mean, there's only so much a third win against Duke can do for North Carolina. Yeah. But, they'd probably, Texas isn't too far. Detroit isn't too far. Like, I think they'd much rather be going there than to Los Angeles. Now, I don't think it's that much easier to get to the Elite 8 as a 1 seed than a 2 seed. I mean, you're playing a really good team in the Sweet 16 either way. So we'll just have to see how it turns out. But it is in Tennessee's hands. If they win the SEC tournament, they will be the last 1 seed. And there's nothing really anybody can do about that. Next up, Mike, we've got Kentucky as 3 seed in the South region. They've turned it on big time recently. They got the road win at Auburn, the road win at Alabama, at Tennessee, not a tournament. Auburn and Alabama too, very similar teams, very high in the metrics. Alabama has some better wins than Auburn. Auburn only 3 wins over the field, but their predictives are so strong that they'll be in the protected seeds. Then we got South Carolina as the 5 seed in the South region, Mike. Same thing as we talked about with the Big 12. They're going to have to jump one of their SEC, you know, their compatriots in the SEC to get a top 4 seed, because only 4 teams from the same conference could be in the top 4 seeds. So the Gamecocks, unfortunately, are likely headed for a 5, which is a really going to be a really tough matchup in the first round. We have got Florida as the 6th seed in the Midwest. They're in real good shape too. Maybe they push up to a 5 with a couple of impressive victories here. And Mississippi State, I got them as my last 9. I think Bracket Matrix has them as a 10 right now. But they're playing better basketball than, those teams on the 10 line, the Big 12 teams that have slumped a little bit. And then, some of the Big East teams that have just beat up on each other. So, I think Texas A&M could swoop in from the very end and maybe steal a bid out of nowhere. But other than that, teams know whether they're going to the tournament or not in this conference.
Yeah, I think they really do. The exception is if somebody like Texas A&M really just catches fire in this tournament. But yeah, a lot of people pretty much know their fate right now.
I think maybe we could see one at this point for these teams, but other than that, they're probably locked in. The SEC, barring a bid steal or something like that, is probably going to be one that the committee will not be watching very closely. These teams all have really good victories anyway. Obviously, you want to hang a banner, but at the same time, you want to be fresh for next Thursday. So, Mike, I think that's it for bracketology now. Trying to get another one out there tomorrow. We'll see how the numbers shake out, and we've got a couple more automatic bids to be clinched tonight. We'll wrap things up, Mike, with our predictions. Who do you think is cutting down the nets in Nashville?
Kind of already gave this away, but I'm going to go to the home team, the Tennessee Volunteers, in this one with the number 1 seed. They're going to have a big crowd, and I think they're going to be motivated by that home crowd throughout the tournament. Barnes has coached well in the SEC tournament before. They've won it a couple times in Nashville. So I really like Tennessee in this one. I think they kind of got their bell rung a little bit against Kentucky in that last game. Probably left a little bit of a sour taste and got those players motivated to take care of business this week in Nashville. So I think they'll win, and I think they're going to get the number 1 seed in the LA region.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting. I think the bottom half of the bracket, Mike, is, we could see chaos. We could see the Texas A&M Florida scenario like you said
we
earlier.
Absolutely could.
And I think, there's a way that Tennessee will probably not have to play their A game to win this thing. And, if Alabama, they'll have to play well to beat Alabama, but you could probably get by South Carolina or Texas A&M or Florida with your B effort. So for the same reason, I'm going with the Volunteers. I do think if they get a round 3 against Kentucky in the championship game, I just can't see the Volunteers losing that again. I know they did lose at home, but they did go into Rupp and put it on them there. So, it's sometimes good to lose, a week before the conference tournament just to, get the attention of your players back. But I'm going with the Volunteers too. So we'll send out a post with all of our, picks for each of the power conferences. But until then, we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to our SEC tournament preview. The SEC tournament starts tomorrow from the Bridgestone Arena in Nashville, Tennessee.